Eulis, thank you for being a part of the Living Archives Project. To get started, where's home for you right now?
Well, thank you for having me, Clay. I've been in the Charlotte area for just about 25 years now.
And Eulis, where were you born?
I was born in Andrews, North Carolina, and it's a little small town outside of Asheville in 1950.
Well, we've just went through a hectic couple of years of a pandemic, and if you don't mind, describe your experience during the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic for me.
Wow, that's a broad question. It would have to be divided to me as far as reactions because there were so many reactions. Initially, we didn't know what to do. Confusion,
Yeah.
wipe this, don't wipe that, mask this, don't mask that, etc., etc. So, as far as experiences, I would have to say first was confusion and everybody scrambling around for information on what to do.
Absolutely.
Okay, I mean
I
that was
remember
really that. And then after that, we'd have to transpond on to, hey, do I need to get out type thing, And if I do, I wear a mask, of course. But,
And did you feel comfortable getting out in those early days?
of course not. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, because I didn't really know. I wore a mask and stayed away from people. Everyone was just scurrying around. We didn't know what to do.
And those early days when that news came out about the masks and the 6 feet apart, how did your behavior change in response to that?
Well, I was a firm believer in the 6 feet apart and the mask. Definitely do anything because at the time, we didn't have any vaccinations. We didn't have any COVID vaccinations. And I adhered to it. I dreaded going to the supermarket. I dreaded going to the post office. But, some people didn't believe in it and some people did, it appeared. You'd see people walking down the wrong way with have these foot-long arrows telling you to go this way, and people were coming the opposite way and not wearing a mask, non-believers, rudeness.
What was your experience with the public when you did go out, when you went to the grocery store or any of the other places you needed to go to? Did you find yourself ever in conflict or in disagreements, or were you comfortable going out? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I'm a pretty straightforward individual, and yes, I did. The only two places I really were going out at the time was the grocery store and the post office. And the grocery store, people were divided and people weren't following protocol on the COVID, etc., etc. I confronted people coming almost face to face with me, even with masks, and I would say, "You're going the wrong way, young lady. Miss, you're going the wrong way." And they'd say, "Oh, I didn't know that." It was a constant battle with people. They either had masks on and were too close or not. A good instance, I was at a post office and the individual there did not have a mask on. This was at the height of the COVID. Did not have a mask on. I had to go to the post office, which I dreaded at the time, but it was necessary to mail a package. Went into the post office, got to the door, and this guy without a mask comes right in my face about 2 feet. I looked at him, I said, "Hey pal, back off." And he looked at me and said, What'd you say to me? And I looked at him, I said, "Well, what are you going to do? Beat up an old man over it?" That's the kind of consultation you had. People deliberately get in your face, but, irregardless, that's the only incidents I can recall.
The responses to the mask mandates and the 6 feet apart was certainly divisive. Did you see any of your friendships strained because of that, disagreements or whatnot?
I did, and that was probably the most disheartening part of it. I had friends, I even had family that they just didn't believe that it was a problem. They didn't wear, some of them didn't wear a mask. I had friends that I thought were friends that, refused to wear a mask, and, due to my, not wanting to spread it to anybody I got, I just, lost a lot of people that I thought might be friends due to the fact they just refused to wear a mask around me. In which, yes, to answer your question the short way, I did. And
how did family respond, and did you find it difficult to distance yourself?
Well, actually, the family part was probably the highlight and the advantage of the COVID, because my family, we actually got closer together even though we were at a distance. Uh, my grandchildren would come over, my son would bring them over in his vehicle, and we'd stand outside and, with the windows down far apart, and I'd talk to the children, they'd talk to me. And as far as that, yes, it did cut down on things like, in person, like, Christmas and birthdays, which I was privileged to one birthday at a distance. But I think it actually strengthened my family a little bit better.
Working through it together, coming up
Absolutely.
with ways to
Absolutely.
stay connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's definitely...
That was a plus. And of course the downside was, Christmas, Valentine's Day, etc., holidays and special things of that nature. But I think I was very lucky because I had a good, supportive family.
Tell me how your behaviors or routines have changed since the pandemic.
Well, actually, it's not that the routines have changed. It's more on the basis of trying to break the routines that I have become a part of my daily life, even on the wind down of the COVID. It's not really changing. It's getting to where you
almost back to a baseline,
almost back to a normal situation. Find myself, still avoiding getting too close to people, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's actually the unwinding part, I think, is the worst part of it.
Have you found yourself staying indoors more often?
Absolutely. That's one thing I was going to bring up. For almost 2 years, we've got in the acclimated to the fact, is the only best way to put it, of being more against social contact, that it's hard to redevelop social contact again. Like, hi, how are you, to the cashier, et cetera, et cetera. All those things are slowly coming back, but it's still not there.
So that actually brings me to my next question, the long-lasting consequences of the pandemic. I think a continuing of some of the behaviors that helped us through the pandemic is definitely one of the long-lasting consequences. Can you think of any others?
Yes. In fact, this is probably the biggest ramification of the whole COVID incident is, number one, we have the people that believed and we have the people that did not believe. And what has happened post-COVID is nothing has been reconciliated. We still have these two divided groups that are still at odds with people, even though the COVID crisis is gone. And we don't have any idea how long this is going to go on, but it is something that I feel like is really something that has really changed the whole populace and makeup of people's ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some good things you've learned through this experience during the pandemic? I know this pandemic has shed a lot of light on how we're divided, but can you think of any ways that we may have benefited?
Well, speaking for myself, in which that's all I can do, what I have benefited from is, and it sounds really corny, but you've had a chance being separate to where you can evaluate where you are or where you want to be at the time, because of the fact that there's nothing out there for you to participate in. So you have to really think about, what do I want to do when things get back to normal? So that's a big deal there, I think.
It highlights what's important in your life.
What's important in your life. And actually, I think it was a wake-up call to a lot of people to reevaluate. You know, we are fortunate. You know, things weren't quite as dire as what I thought they were. You know.
Absolutely. The process of transitioning from quarantine behaviors to non-quarantine behaviors, you said, is a long-lasting effect. How have you found that transition? Have you found it to be an easy one, or it sounds like maybe it wasn't an easy one to transition?
Well, for me, it's not an easy transition. And the reason for that, I can only guess, would be because I took the COVID as being a serious situation. I had a mindset on what to do and not what not to do and what to do, where it's hard to get back in the same routine, to where you just act on instinct without thinking, hey, is this the right thing to do? Or, you know, so.
Think back to March 2020, the beginning of everything, the announcement of the virus, transitioning into a pandemic state, and what your life was like then and how it's changed since March of 2020.
Well, that's quite a broad question. Things have changed so much since then, because it has been 2 years. The biggest change, absolutely, as far as a negative, is it feels like I've almost lost 2 years of where, you know, it could be more of a progressive state. On the upswing, I have to say it really has made me, and I mean this, appreciate life a little more in what we would call any type of normalcy, really. People look a little better. The sun looks a little better. You have to be optimistic after you've weathered a storm like what we have.
Yeah, we've never gone through something like this, and I think it does highlight those things that we might take for granted. Getting out with our family members, holidays, birthdays, and I can absolutely agree with you on that. What do you think the future will look like? How will this affect us long term, and what's the future hold?
Well, right now, we're just now, I think, learning a little bit about what it's to hold, because everything is changing, from how we get our paper towels to how we get our favorite burger. You know, so it's a never-changing situation, and I don't believe we settled on exactly what is going to be the norm right now, but I think everybody's struggling to, you know, find some type of normalcy, and it's one of those things that, you know, I don't believe we've really settled on a certain value as far as what's going to be normal right now, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we're still recovering and learning and settling in. What did you learn from your own personal experiences through it all? At the end of the day, what did you learn?
Wow. As I said, that's a broad question. There's so many sides as far as what would be learned from the situation. I'd have to say the biggest thing I learned is that if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a damn duck. You know, it's not a goose. And that's the only thing I've got to say, because that is really a broad term. You know,
so
you can edit that out. But
so a virus is a virus, and a mask is going to protect you.
Absolutely.
And a vaccine is going to protect
and
you.
a vaccine is going to protect you. I mean, it's just like, you know, waking up in the morning and putting your shoes on. You know?
I love it. I love it. Eulis, thank you so much for taking the time with me today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you.
I certainly appreciate it.